The old alien never thought it'd happen. Now his dog, PNG Zorvok, was old, much older than most of his kind. His face, lined with the wisdom and age of centuries, held an expression that betrayed little emotion. He was a leader among the Ivalka, a species known for their immense power and long lifespan. In the eyes of his people, Zorvok was a figure to be respected, even feared. Yet despite all of his experience, there was one thing that puzzled him beyond measure: his daughter, Elira. Elira was not like the others of their kind. She was curious, always questioning, always seeking more than what her birthright could provide. Zorvok had always believed that humanity was a lesser species, weak, primitive, and insignificant in the grand design of the universe. To him, humans were nothing more than a fleeting curiosity, not worthy of much thought. He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and humans, with their short lives and simple ways, seemed nothing more than another brief flicker in the cosmos. But Elira, his daughter, had a different view. She was fascinated by Earth, a planet he had barely given a second glance. She would spend hours talking about it, about their cultures, their histories, their ways of life. Zorvok's patience with her was wearing thin. "Why focus on them?" he would ask. "We are a people of great knowledge and power. We do not need to waste time with these primitive creatures." But Elira, ever stubborn, would only smile and shake her head. She believed that there was something in humans that her father was blind to. She saw potential, not weakness. She believed that Earth held secrets, things beyond the understanding of even the most advanced species. And despite her father's constant disapproval, Elira found herself drawn to Earth even more: its people, their struggles, their triumphs. There was a fire in humanity that fascinated her, a kind of raw energy that seemed to come from the very core of their existence. One day, Elira made a decision that Zorvok would never forget. Without his permission, she boarded a ship and left the safety of their home. She set course for Earth, her heart filled with both excitement and fear. She knew her father would be furious when he found out, but she was determined. She had to see for herself what made humanity so unique. She had to understand them, not just from the outside, but from within. She wanted to know the truth. Zorvok, back on the Ivalka homeworld, soon discovered his daughter's disappearance. The news hit him like a bolt of lightning. He felt a surge of anger and worry, but underneath it there was something else, a sense of betrayal. How could she do this to him? How could she turn her back on the wisdom of their people and embark on a foolish journey to a world that had no meaning? He immediately began preparations to find her and bring her back. His first instinct was to punish her, to show her the consequences of defying him. But there was also a deeper concern gnawing at him. What if Elira had discovered something on Earth that would change everything? The thought was unsettling. Elira had already arrived on Earth by the time her father started his pursuit. She was stunned by the planet's beauty and chaos all at once. The streets of its cities were filled with life, people from all walks of life, each one living their own story. The air was thick with the sounds of voices, the hum of machinery, and the distant rumble of traffic. To Elira, it felt like a world brimming with potential, with stories yet to be told. She wandered through the streets, her heart racing with excitement, knowing she was about to uncover something that would change the way she saw the universe forever. It was during one of these walks that Elira came across something unexpected. Hidden beneath a pile of rubble in an old, forgotten part of the city, she found a small artifact. It was an ancient relic, unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a stone, smooth and cold to the touch, but it pulsed with an energy that was unlike anything Elira had ever felt. She could feel its power deep within her, calling to her. As soon as her fingers brushed the surface of the stone, Elira was flooded with visions, images of the past, the future, and things that made no sense at all. She saw vast galaxies, ancient civilizations, and strange creatures from across the stars. The stone was more than just an object. It was a key, a connection to something far greater. Elira realized with a jolt of excitement that this was the discovery she had been searching for. This artifact, this soul stone, could change everything, but her joy was short-lived. As she turned to leave the alley, the ground beneath her trembled, and a voice echoed through the streets. The rival faction of aliens, led by a group known as the Vraks, had found her. They had been searching for the soul stone for centuries, and Elira had unwittingly become their target. She barely had time to react before she was captured, pulled into the shadows, and taken to their hidden base. Meanwhile, Zorvok, now aware of his daughter's capture, was on his way to Earth. His heart was heavy with worry, but there was also a flicker of something else: fear. For the first time in his long life, Zorvak began to wonder if Elira had stumbled upon something far more powerful than he could have imagined. If the Soul Stone was as important as it seemed, then everything he had known about the universe could be wrong. The Vrax would stop at nothing to harness its power, and Elira's life was now in their hands. Zorvak's ship broke through the atmosphere, and as he looked down at the planet below, he knew that the world he had long dismissed was now the key to his daughter's survival. There was no turning back now. He would find Elira, and he would do whatever it took to bring her home. But as he stared down at Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change forever. His view of humanity, of his daughter, and of the universe itself was about to be shattered. Zorvak's ship descended through the atmosphere, breaking the clouds as it approached Earth's surface. His eyes, hardened by centuries of experience, scanned the planet below. The vibrant blue of the oceans and the swirling clouds reminded him of nothing more than a beautiful, fragile ball in the vastness of space. He had never thought much of Earth, until now. The alien's hands tightened around the ship's controls. Elira, his daughter, was there somewhere, held by those who would use her. The fear he felt was unexpected, almost alien to him. He had always been a man of logic, a man who believed in the strength of his own people. And yet, the thought of losing Elira, of seeing her fall into the hands of the Vrax, disturbed him deeply. There was something about her, something that had always made her different, something that made her special. And now she was trapped on this chaotic planet, surrounded by beings Zorvak had long considered beneath him. He had spent years leading his people, making decisions that would shape the course of history. Yet, in that moment, as the ship's landing gear touched Earth's soil, he felt a strange uncertainty gnawing at him. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity was not as weak as he had believed. Perhaps they were capable of something more. The thought troubled him even more than the Vrax threat itself. Zorvak stepped off the ship and into the harsh sunlight. The air was thick with the scent of Earth's plant life, the sounds of distant vehicles, and the hum of a city not far away. He adjusted to the gravity of the planet, the small difference from his homeworld a reminder of how far he had come. He was far from his home, far from the comfort of his people. Earth was unfamiliar, chaotic, and to him, primitive. But it was also the place where his daughter was held, and that was enough to make him take every step toward the unknown. He didn't have time to waste. The Vrax had likely already begun their search for him. Their cold, calculating minds were known for being ruthless in their pursuit of power. They had tracked Elira to Earth, and now they would stop at nothing to gain control of the Soul Stone. If they succeeded, it would mean the end of more than just Earth. It would be the end of everything Zorvak knew. Zorvak made his way through the bustling streets of the city, drawing little attention from the humans around him. He moved quickly, his mind focused on one goal: finding Elira. He needed information, allies, anything that could help him locate the Vrax and his daughter before it was too late. It wasn't long before he encountered a group of humans who, oddly enough, seemed to know exactly what he was looking for. They were part of a small group who had already begun to notice the strange things happening around them. Unexplained disappearances, flashes of light in the night sky, and whispers about a secret war involving alien factions. Zorvak approached them cautiously, his instincts telling him that these humans, though somewhat unrefined, might be the key to his daughter's rescue. One of them, a young man named Leo, stepped forward. His expression was a mixture of determination and fear. "You're looking for her, aren't you?" Leo asked, his voice low, as if afraid to speak too loudly. "Elira, we know where she is." Zorvak studied the man, his gaze sharp and calculating. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had ruled empires and crushed foes. "What do you know of my daughter?" Leo swallowed hard, but he didn't back down. "We're just trying to help. There's a group, Vrax, right? They're holding her. But they're not the only ones interested in her. There's a power struggle happening here on Earth. Some humans want to use her, some want to protect her." Zorvak's mind raced. He had known that Earth's leaders, though primitive, were not without ambition. He had underestimated them. He had assumed that his daughter's discovery of the Soul Stone would go unnoticed, but clearly, that had been a mistake. The Soul Stone was more than just an artifact. It was a key to unlocking a power that could change the fate of entire civilizations. "And where is she now?" Zorvak asked, his voice colder now, more urgent. Leo hesitated before speaking again. There's a compound on the outskirts of the city. It's heavily guarded. We've tried to get inside, but the Vraks have made it impossible. Zorvok's mind shifted into full tactical mode. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The Vraks wouldn't be easy to defeat. They were as cunning as they were brutal. But Zorvok had something they didn't, centuries of experience and a fierce love for his daughter that would not let him fail. "I will find a way inside," Zorvok said with a finality that left no room for argument. "You," he said, pointing to Leo, "stay out of my way." Leo nodded, though it was clear he didn't understand the true weight of what Zorvok was saying. But that was of little concern to him. He would need the humans' help in ways they couldn't yet understand. The Vraks were ruthless, and Elira's safety was more important than anything else. If they were going to succeed, Zorvok would need to use every resource at his disposal, even if that meant relying on these flawed creatures. The sun was setting when Zorvok finally reached the compound, a massive building fortified and surrounded by high walls. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of distant alarms echoed through the night. Zorvok's heart pounded as he approached the gates. This was it. The moment he had been preparing for, the moment that would determine not only his daughter's fate, but possibly the fate of Earth itself. As Zorvok scaled the outer wall, his thoughts turned to Elira. The last time he had seen her, she had been so young, so full of hope. He had dismissed her dreams, her visions of a greater world. He had believed that his wisdom was enough. But now, as he faced the reality of the situation, he realized just how wrong he had been. Elira had seen something he hadn't. She had glimpsed a future where humanity played a key role, where they were no longer weak, no longer insignificant. And now, it was his turn to see it too. Zorvok made his way through the compound's inner walls, moving silently and efficiently. He was a master of stealth, a creature who had spent centuries in the shadows, and he would not be seen now. As he approached the inner chamber, he could feel the presence of the Vraks. They were waiting for him, no doubt, but they would be no match for his skill, his determination, and his understanding of their methods. Elira was inside, and he would not leave without her. Zorvok moved with purpose through the shadows of the compound, his mind focused on one thing: Elira. He had come too far and sacrificed too much to let anything stand in his way now. The heavy silence of the night weighed on him, but it was the steady pulse of the soulstone that filled his thoughts. He had only seen it briefly in Elira's possession, but the power it held was undeniable. It was a key to something greater than even the most advanced species could comprehend, and the Vraks were desperate to control it. But Zorvok's thoughts were not entirely on the stone. They were on his daughter. Elira had always been different. From the time she was a child, she had shown a curiosity and compassion that set her apart from the cold, calculating nature of their people. While the Ivalka prided themselves on their strength, Elira had always seen something beyond power. She had always believed in the potential for change, in the idea that even the most unlikely of beings could shape the future. Zorvok had never fully understood that belief, and now, standing here, infiltrating an enemy base to save her, he was beginning to wonder if she had known something he hadn't. As he moved deeper into the compound, Zorvok came across a group of Vraks guards. They were nothing more than shadows in the dim light, their angular bodies standing stiff and still as they patrolled the hallways. Zorvok's breath slowed as he approached them, carefully positioning himself so he would be unseen. He had studied the Vraks for years, and he knew that they relied on precision and calculation. They would not hesitate to kill if they thought someone was a threat, but if he moved quickly and silently, they would never know he was there. He waited for the right moment, and as the guards turned their backs, he slid through the shadows, his movements fluid and deliberate. The Vraks were unaware of his presence, and he took advantage of their blind spots, slipping past them and into the heart of the compound. His mind raced as he moved. He was getting closer to Elira, and every step brought him closer to finding out what she had discovered. What had she seen in humanity that had driven her to defy him and leave their world behind? He had to know. As he reached the central chamber of the compound, he paused. The door before him was massive, reinforced with metal and guarded by 2 more Vrak sentries. Zorvok could hear the muffled sounds of voices from inside, the voices of the Vraks, and he hoped, Elira. He had to be careful now. There was no room for error. He crouched low, watching the guards as they exchanged brief words. They were bored, tired of waiting, and for a moment their vigilance slipped. It was the opening Zorvok needed. He lunged forward, moving with the speed of a predator. His hands were quick, and in seconds the guards were on the ground, unconscious. Zorvok didn't waste any time. He pushed open the door and entered the room, his eyes scanning for Elira. The chamber was large, filled with alien technology that hummed and glowed with an eerie blue light. At the center of the room stood Elira, her hands glowing with the power of the Soul Stone. Her eyes were closed, her body still as if she were in a trance. The Soul Stone pulsed with energy, its light casting long shadows on the walls. Elira's face was serene, but there was something in her expression that told Zorvok that she was struggling. The power of the stone was overwhelming her, just as it had overwhelmed the Vrax who sought to control it. "Elira," Zorvok called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes fluttered open, and for the briefest moment there was a flicker of recognition. But then her expression hardened and she stepped away from the stone, her hand raised as if to shield herself from him. "No, father," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "I can't go back. I can't be the person you want me to be. I'm not like you." Zorvok felt a pang of sorrow in his chest. "Elira, listen to me. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Soul Stone is too powerful. The Vrax will use it to destroy everything. You have to come with me." Elira shook her head, her grip on the Soul Stone tightening. "No, you don't understand. It's not about power. It's about something bigger than both of us. The humans, they're not what you think. They have something inside them that no one else does. I can feel it. I can see it. They're capable of things we've never even dreamed of. The Soul Stone is just a part of it, a key to something we can't even begin to understand." Zorvok stared at his daughter, his mind racing. Could it be true? Could humans really possess something that the Ivalka and other species had missed? His heart sank as he realized that Elira had become something he could not control. She had found a purpose, a vision for the future that he could not see, and she was willing to sacrifice everything for it. Before he could speak, the door to the chamber slammed open and the Vrax rushed in, their weapons drawn. They had found him. Zorvok was ready, but Elira's expression shifted, a fierce determination in her eyes. She turned to face the Vrax, the Soul Stone glowing brighter as she called upon its power. "No, Elira!" Zorvok shouted, rushing toward her, but it was too late. The stone's energy surged through her, and the room was filled with a blinding light. Zorvok shielded his eyes, and when the light faded, he saw Elira standing, her eyes filled with the same resolve she had shown when she left their world behind. "You're wrong, father," she said softly. "This isn't about us anymore. This is about them." The Vrax were stunned, their weapons useless against the force Elira had unlocked within herself. They hesitated for only a moment, and that was enough. Zorvok, acting quickly, took advantage of their confusion and struck, disabling their weapons and rendering them unconscious. The threat was over for now. Zorvok looked at his daughter, his heart heavy with a mixture of pride and fear. "Elira, what have you done?" Elira looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "I've done what needed to be done, father. You may not understand it now, but this is the future I believe in." Zorvok felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had always thought he was the one who held the answers. But as he looked at Elira, standing there, a force in her own right, he realized that perhaps she had always known the truth. The truth that the universe was not just about power and control, but about something far more elusive, something the humans had, and something he could no longer deny. Zorvok stood motionless as the last of the Vrax agents fell to the floor, their weapons scattered around them. The room was silent now, save for the hum of the Soul Stone in Elira's hands. It pulsed with an otherworldly energy, a power that Zorvok couldn't fully understand but knew was both beautiful and dangerous. The air felt heavier, as though the very fabric of reality had shifted in the wake of Elira's transformation. For a moment, Zorvok's mind reeled. His daughter, the one he had tried so hard to protect and control, had surpassed him. She was no longer the young girl who had been filled with dreams of something beyond their people's reach. Elira was now the vessel of a force far beyond his comprehension, and the implications of that were overwhelming. He glanced at Elira, who stood tall, her eyes reflecting the power of the Soul Stone, but also the depth of the journey she had undertaken. She was no longer the same person he had known. There was something in her now, something ancient and powerful, and Zorvok couldn't decide if he should be proud or afraid. "You've changed, Elira," Zorvok said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "What have you done?" Elira looked at him, her face calm, yet there was a hardness in her expression. "I've done what needed to be done, Father, what you failed to see all this time. Humanity isn't weak. They are strong in ways we never understood. They've always had the power to change everything." Zorvok's heart twisted. He had always believed that strength lay in control, in the power of one's people, in their ability to dominate the universe. Yet Elira was now telling him something different. She wasn't speaking of dominance or control. She was speaking of something far more complex, something Zorvok had never considered before. Could it really be true? Could humanity hold the key to something greater than even his own people's vast power? The questions swirled in Zorvok's mind, but he didn't have time to dwell on them. The Vraks had been dealt with for now, but there were still forces at play, and they wouldn't rest. The Soul Stone was too valuable to leave in the hands of any one faction, and Elira's connection to it made her a target. Zorvok knew this was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning. "Elira," Zorvok said firmly, his tone more resolute, "we can't stay here. The Vraks will come again, and worse, there are others out there who will want the Soul Stone as much as they did. We need to leave Earth. You need to leave Earth." Elira shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "You don't understand, Father. I can't just leave now. I've seen it. There's more here than you know. Humans are on the brink of something. The Soul Stone was never meant for us. It's meant for them. They are the ones who will lead the universe into a new age, and I won't abandon that." Zorvok's chest tightened with a mix of frustration and fear. He had always considered himself a protector, a guide for his people, but now his daughter was showing him a path he wasn't sure he could follow. How could he, a being who had lived for centuries, who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, accept that humans of all beings, were the ones who would determine the fate of the universe? "I will not let you go down this path alone," Zorvok said, his voice firm but filled with a deep sadness. "You may have found power, but you've also found danger. The Vraks will not be the last to seek the Soul Stone. And without the proper guidance, the humans won't be able to protect it." Elira's gaze softened, but her resolve did not waver. "That's where you're wrong, Father. They can protect it. They just need to believe in themselves. They need to know that they can fight for their future, that they are more than just survivors. I've seen their strength, their will to push forward no matter the odds. They just need the right guidance. I can help them." Zorvok took a step forward, his eyes locked with hers. "And you think you can be their guide? Elira, you're not one of them. You're my daughter. You were born to lead the Ivalka, to rule with wisdom and strength, not to play the role of a mentor for a species that doesn't understand the power they wield." Elira smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Maybe that's true, but I've learned something in all of this, Father. True leadership isn't about being the strongest or the most powerful. It's about seeing potential in others, believing in their ability to rise above their limitations. And I believe that the humans are ready for the Soul Stone, ready to take their place in the universe." Zorvok looked at his daughter, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. He had always believed that power was everything, that it was the key to control, to peace, to order. But Elira had shown him something else, something he didn't fully understand. She had seen something in humanity that he had missed. And now, as he stood there with the fate of his daughter and the universe hanging in the balance, he wasn't sure if he was ready to accept the truth. "Then what do we do now?" Zorvok asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Elira's expression softened, her eyes filled with a kind of quiet strength. "Now we protect them, together, but we also prepare them. The Vraks won't stop. We need to make sure that the humans are ready to stand on their own. We can't fight their battles for them, Father. But we can give them the tools they need to fight for themselves." Zorvok felt a heavy weight settle over him. For the first time in his long life, he felt like an outsider in his own world. Elira had chosen her path, and it was a path that would change everything. The Soul Stone was no longer just a symbol of power. It was a beacon for something greater, something that could reshape the universe. And for better or worse, his daughter was leading the charge. He looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in a long while, and for the first time he understood. She wasn't the girl he had tried to control. She wasn't the daughter who needed to be protected. Elira had become something else, something beyond his reach, beyond his understanding. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was right. Perhaps humanity was meant for something greater. With a heavy sigh, Zorvok nodded. "Then let's prepare them," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was still full of uncertainty. "Let's make sure they're ready." Elira smiled, a look of determination and hope in her eyes. We will. Together, the days following their decision to join forces were filled with urgency. Zorvok and Elira worked together, though their perspectives often clashed. Zorvok, with his centuries of wisdom and experience, still found it difficult to fully trust humanity, even after all that had happened. He had spent so much of his life ruling, guiding his people with an iron hand. But Elira had seen something different in the humans. Something he hadn't been able to see before. Now standing side by side with her, Zorvok was starting to wonder if he had been wrong all along. Elira was different. There was a new fire in her, a quiet strength that Zorvok couldn't deny. She had always been a dreamer, but now she had a purpose. She was guiding humanity, helping them understand the true power of the Soul Stone, but more importantly, helping them see the potential within themselves. Humans had always struggled with their self-doubt, but Elira believed in them. She knew they were capable of great things, and Zorvok was beginning to believe it too. They had gathered a small group of humans who had witnessed the power of the Soul Stone and were now ready to take their place in a larger conflict. Zorvok didn't fully understand why Elira believed in them so much, but he couldn't deny the spark of hope he saw in their eyes. These humans were different from the ones he had encountered before. They were not just survivors. They were fighters, willing to do whatever it took to protect their world and the people they loved. The compound that had once been a prison for Elira was now a place of preparation. Humans, aliens, and Ivalka alike trained together, each learning from the other. Zorvok led the Ivalka in combat strategies, teaching them to fight alongside the humans, not as their conquerors, but as their allies. Elira, in turn, taught the humans to harness the power of the Soul Stone. She knew the stone's energy better than anyone, and she showed them how to channel its power without losing control. The training was intense, and the days were long, but there was an undeniable sense of unity growing between the humans and their new allies. Zorvok watched as they worked together, sharing knowledge, learning to trust each other. He could see Elira's influence in everything they did. She had brought something to them that he never thought possible: hope, not just for survival, but for a future. A future where they could shape their own destiny. Still, there were moments when doubt crept into Zorvok's mind. Could humans really be ready for the responsibility that came with the Soul Stone? Could they truly lead the galaxy into a new age of peace and prosperity? He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and none had ever been able to rise to such a challenge. Why should humanity be any different? One evening, after another long day of training, Zorvok found himself alone, standing on the edge of a high balcony overlooking the compound. The stars above twinkled in the vastness of space, and for the first time in a long while, Zorvok felt small. He had spent so many years commanding the future of his people, shaping the world around him. But now, as he looked down at the humans below, he realized how little control he truly had. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Elira approaching. She had grown even more confident in the time since their arrival on Earth. There was a grace in the way she moved now, a strength that came from within. Zorvok could see the change in her. She wasn't the girl who had once sought his approval. She was a leader in her own right. "You're thinking again, father," Elira said softly, her voice calm but her eyes full of understanding. Zorvok didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. She knew him too well. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Zorvok finally asked, his voice filled with quiet uncertainty. Elira stood beside him, looking up at the stars. "I don't think about the right thing, father. I think about what's possible, what we can do. Humans aren't perfect, but they have something I've never seen in any other species. They have the ability to change, to grow, and that's what makes them special." Zorvok sighed, his gaze returning to the compound below. "I've spent my life trying to control everything to make sure nothing goes wrong. But every time I think I've got a handle on things, I realize there's something bigger than me, something I can't control." Elira smiled faintly. "That's the point, father. You're not supposed to control everything. Neither am I. We can guide, we can protect, but ultimately it's up to them, up to humanity." Zorvok turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "And you truly believe they can lead the galaxy?" Elira met his gaze without hesitation. "I do. I've seen it, and I know they're ready." Zorvok didn't know if he was convinced, but he knew that there was something about Elira's conviction that made him want to believe. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't about control. Maybe it was about trust, trust in his daughter, trust in humanity, and trust in the future that was unfolding before them. The next day, the Vraks launched another attack. This time, however, Zorvok and Elira were ready. The humans were ready. They fought together, Ivalka, humans, and their allies, against the Vraks' forces that had once seemed invincible. Zorvok had seen many battles in his time, but there was something different about this one. It wasn't just about strength or strategy. It was about something deeper. It was about belief. Belief in each other, belief in their future, and belief in the power of the Soul Stone. As the battle raged on, Zorvok found himself fighting alongside the humans, not as their commander, but as their equal. He saw their determination, their will to protect what was theirs, and he realized that Elira had been right all along. Humanity had the strength to stand up to the universe's greatest threats, not because they were the most powerful, but because they refused to back down. They refused to give up. The Vraks were defeated, but Zorvok knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more battles, more struggles ahead, but this time they wouldn't be fighting alone. They had humanity on their side. As the dust settled and the sound of combat faded, Zorvok looked at Elira standing tall among the humans. Her eyes were filled with hope, with purpose. She had found her place in the universe, and so had humanity. Zorvok had come to Earth believing that it was a planet of no consequence, a mere speck in the vastness of the galaxy. But now, as he watched the humans standing together, he realized that Earth was the beginning of something much greater. It wasn't just about power or control. It was about the potential to change, to grow, and to create a future that could shape the universe. He turned to Elira, a proud smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You were right, Elira," he said quietly. "You were right about everything." Elira smiled back at him, a sense of peace settling over her. "We're just getting started, Father. The universe will know the name of Earth." Zorvok nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. He had come to Earth to save his daughter, but in the end, it was humanity that had saved him. And together, they would create a future unlike any the galaxy had ever seen.